They called it the most secure museum on Earth, but the password to its surveillance system was Louvre. 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning. Galleries filling with tourists. 4 men in high-visibility vests are about to walk away with $102 million in French crown jewels. The Regent diamond, 140 carats of flawless brilliance, worn by every French monarch from Louis XV to Napoleon, sits in a case just meters away. The thieves will ignore it entirely, because they're not after the most valuable stone in France. They're after something they can dismantle, something they can break apart and scatter before anyone realizes what's been lost. This is the story of how a decade of ignored warnings, a single security camera facing the wrong direction, and a furniture lift stolen through a fake Craigslist ad exposed the world's greatest museum as one of its softest targets. How 4 petty criminals from the Paris suburbs, not master thieves, not international syndicates, stumbled into the heist of the century and left their DNA scattered across the crime scene like a signature. To understand what was taken, you first have to understand where it was kept. The Galerie d'Apollon, first floor of the Louvre's Denon wing, a room that is not merely a gallery, but the birthplace of French royal splendor. In 1661, fire destroyed the original gallery that stood here, and King Louis XIV, just 23 years old, newly committed to his image as the Sun King, ordered something far grander built in its place. He named it for Apollo, god of the sun and the arts, and summoned the greatest painters and gilders of the age to create what would become the template for Versailles' Hall of Mirrors. Since 1887, this magnificent room has housed what remains of the French crown jewels, survivors of revolution and theft, survivors of a government auction that scattered most of the royal collection to buyers across the globe. 23 pieces remained in the Louvre's care. Diamonds that had crowned kings, emeralds gifted by emperors, pearls worn by women whose portraits still hang in these very halls. Among them, the emerald necklace of Empress Marie-Louise, 32 emeralds and over 1,000 diamonds, a wedding gift from Napoleon in 1810. His attempt to buy legitimacy through marriage to an Austrian archduchess. The sapphire parure of Queen Marie Amélie. Ceylon sapphires the color of midnight. A tiara and necklace worn by the last Queen of France before revolution swept the Orléans from power. And the jewels of Empress Eugénie, wife of Napoleon III, a Spanish countess who became one of the most fashionable women of the 19th century and accumulated gems to match her station. Her pearl diadem alone contained 212 pearls and nearly 2,000 diamonds, created by the jeweler Lemonnier in 1853 to celebrate her marriage to the emperor. And her crown, 1,354 diamonds surrounding 56 deep green emeralds, created in 1855, the only surviving crown of a French empress, valued at tens of millions of euros on its own. For over a century, these treasures sat behind what everyone assumed was impenetrable security. Bulletproof display cases, alarm systems, and 9 million visitors per year, creating what should have been an army of witnesses. But the warnings had started a decade earlier, and no one had listened. December 2014. France's National Cybersecurity Agency conducted a comprehensive audit of the Louvre's digital infrastructure, testing everything from alarm networks to badge access controls. Their 26-page report was devastating. Weak passwords throughout the system, outdated software including machines still running Windows 2000, vulnerabilities that would allow hackers to remotely alter video feeds, and the password protecting the entire surveillance network, the system watching over billions in irreplaceable art. Louvre, 3 years later came another audit. 40 pages documenting serious shortcomings. Malfunctioning security equipment, poorly trained staff, and rooftop access points left completely unguarded. The report concluded that the threat of an attack with dramatic consequences could no longer be ignored. But the museum prioritized what one critic later called visible and attractive operations over basic infrastructure. Security positions were cut even as visitor numbers soared to nearly 9 million per year, leaving fewer guards to watch more people protecting more treasures than any museum on Earth. Only 39% of the museum's rooms were monitored by cameras, and the single camera outside the Apollo Gallery, the room housing the crown jewels, was pointed west while the thieves would come from the east. October 10, 2025. 9 days before the heist, a trap is being set. A man who owns a furniture lift, the kind Parisians use to hoist sofas through apartment windows, receives a job request through Le Bon Coin, France's equivalent of Craigslist, for a moving job in a suburb north of the city. The town is called Louvre, spelled almost identically to the museum, a coincidence that would later strike investigators as either darkly poetic or grimly ironic. When the driver arrives around 10 a.m., 2 men ambush him and steal the truck along with its Berker Aguilo lift, a German-made machine capable of raising 400 kilograms at 42 meters per minute. The crew assembling for this job came mostly from Seine-Saint-Denis, a northeastern Paris suburb. 4 men with criminal records heavy on petty theft, at least 17 prior convictions between them. A 34-year-old Algerian national who worked odd jobs as a garbage collector. A 39-year-old who'd once rammed his car into an ATM to get the cash inside, and a 37-year-old convicted alongside him in a 2015 burglary. These were not Ocean's 11 sophisticates. These were small-time thieves from the margins of Paris, men whose biggest scores had been stolen cars and smashed ATMs, about to attempt one of the largest museum heists in history. Sunday, October 19th, 9 a.m. The Louvre opens its doors. The countdown begins. By 9:15, visitors are queuing for the Mona Lisa 3 galleries away, while outside on Quai François Mitterrand, the road along the Seine beneath the Apollo Gallery, a truck appears and parks facing the wrong way on a one-way street. 2 men step out wearing high-visibility vests, one yellow and one orange, standard construction worker attire that renders them effectively invisible. Just more maintenance workers in a city perpetually under renovation. No one questions why a furniture lift is parked beneath a world-famous museum. No one asks for permits, and the single security camera that might have captured them is pointing the other direction entirely. 9:30 a.m. The lift begins to rise. 2 men in the basket, 42 meters per minute toward the second-floor balcony. They're heading for the eastern balcony of the Apollo Gallery, a spot chosen precisely because it sits in a camera blind spot. The one external camera nearby is aimed west, leaving this section of facade completely unmonitored. One of the men pulls out an angle grinder, a common power tool available at any hardware store, and begins cutting through the window glass, sparks flying as hardened steel meets 18th century architecture. 9:34 a.m. The alarm triggers. A signal reaches the security post. 4 minutes remain. The 2 thieves climb through the shattered window into the Galerie d'Apollon, their angle grinders still running, surrounded by 3 centuries of French royal history. Gilded ceilings, Baroque paintings, and 3 glass cases containing the crown jewels. Museum guards approach but retreat when they see the power tools. The thieves brandish their angle grinders like weapons, spinning blades enough to keep anyone at distance while they work. The display cases were designed years ago to withstand bullets, the dominant threat model for jewelry heists at the time. But they were never tested against an angle grinder at close range, and the hardened glass begins to give way. The thieves don't shatter the cases completely. They cut holes just large enough to reach through and grab, gloved hands pulling necklaces, tiaras and brooches through openings that weren't quite big enough for everything. Marie-Louise's emerald necklace and earrings, the sapphire parure of Queen Marie-Amélie, tiara, necklace, and a single earring, its pair left behind. Eugénie's pearl diadem, her diamond bow brooch, her reliquary brooch, and Empress Eugénie's crown itself, 1,354 diamonds, 56 emeralds, the only surviving crown of a French empress, stuffed into a bag alongside centuries of irreplaceable history. 9:38 a.m., 4 minutes inside. The thieves climb back through the window. The lift descends. But in their haste, something goes wrong. Empress Eugénie's crown, pulled through a hole too small for its ornate frame, slips from someone's grasp and tumbles nearly 2 stories into the dry moat below. Security footage captures what happens next. Both men lean over the edge of the lift basket, staring down at the fallen crown. A moment of hesitation that costs precious seconds before they decide to abandon it and flee. 2 accomplices wait below on high-powered Yamaha T-Max scooters, and within seconds of touching ground, all 4 men are racing southeast toward the A6 highway, disappearing into Paris traffic. They'd planned to torch the lift truck to destroy evidence. Gasoline was found at the scene, but police and museum security arrived almost simultaneously, forcing them to abandon the vehicle and everything inside it. 2 angle grinders, a blowtorch, gasoline, gloves, a walkie-talkie, a blanket, a motorcycle helmet, and the crown. The first call to police came not from the Louvre's alarm system, but from a cyclist riding along the Seine, who dialed emergency services after seeing helmeted men with a basket lift doing something that didn't look quite right. The Louvre closed immediately, a rarity for an institution that prides itself on accessibility, and would remain shuttered for 3 days while forensic teams processed the largest crime scene in the museum's history. 100 investigators, 7 days a week, 150 forensic samples, 189 items of evidence. The hunt begins. The thieves had been remarkably sloppy for men who'd just stolen $100 million, leaving DNA on the motorcycle helmet, the angle grinder, the window frame, the display cases, and most crucially, on one of the getaway scooters. French police maintain extensive DNA databases of known offenders, and within days, the genetic evidence produced matches, not to international art thieves, but to men already in the system for petty theft and traffic violations. October 25th, 6 days after the heist. Investigators from France's elite BRI unit follow a 34-year-old Algerian national to Charles de Gaulle Airport, where he's attempting to board a one-way flight to Algeria. They arrest him at the gate. His DNA had matched samples from one of the getaway scooters, placing him definitively at the scene, and his attempt to flee suggested consciousness of guilt. That same night, police raid an apartment in Aubervilliers, arresting a 39-year-old whose DNA was found on the window frame and display cases, believed to be the second man who entered the gallery. This second suspect would later be identified in French media as a social media personality with a modest following. A man who documented his life online while apparently planning one of the largest museum heists in history. After 4 days in custody, both men partially admitted their involvement, not full confessions. but enough to confirm what the DNA had already proven, that these were indeed the men who'd broken into the Louvre. On October 29th, police arrested 5 more people, including a 37-year-old man whose DNA was found inside the basket lift, along with his 38-year-old domestic partner, a woman with whom he had children. The 37-year-old had 11 prior convictions, 10 for theft, and had been convicted in 2015 alongside the 39-year-old. Old accomplices reunited for a bigger score, though both he and his partner denied involvement. By late November, authorities announced that a 39-year-old arrested in subsequent raids was believed to be the 4th and final member, meaning all 4 men who'd entered the frame of the heist were now in custody. 5 suspects charged, 8 jewels still missing, 1 crown recovered, 1 nation demanding answers. 3 days after the heist, Louvre director Laurence Descartes appeared before the French Senate and acknowledged what everyone suspected. The museum's surveillance systems had failed catastrophically at the moment they were needed most. The perimeter cameras were aging and insufficient, she admitted, and the only camera on the Apollo gallery side faced west. It did not cover the balcony where the thieves broke in, a blind spot that had existed for years. Descartes revealed she had offered her resignation to the Ministry of Culture on the day of the robbery itself, but the offer was declined. The government calculating that removing her would only compound the crisis. President Macron condemned the robbery as an attack on a heritage that we cherish because it is our history, pledging that the jewels would be recovered and the perpetrators brought to justice. Though as weeks passed, the first promise remained unfulfilled. Art recovery experts warned that police had perhaps a week to find the jewels before they'd be dismantled forever. The gold melted down, the diamonds recut to erase their provenance. Centuries of history reduced to untraceable raw materials. Prosecutor Laure Becquot issued a public appeal. "These jewels are now unsellable," she said, their images circulating globally through Interpol, and there's still time to give them back before consequences become irreversible. But as of this recording, 8 pieces of the French crown jewels remain missing: Napoleon's emeralds, the sapphires of France's last queen, the pearls and diamonds of Empress Eugénie. Their location known only to those who took them. Only Empress Eugénie's crown has been recovered, damaged but restorable according to conservators. Its 1,300 diamonds and 56 emeralds survived the 2-story fall, though some stones were displaced and the metalwork bent. What the Louvre heist revealed was something more troubling than a single security failure. It exposed a decade of institutional complacency, of warnings ignored and budgets prioritized towards spectacle, while foundations of protection crumbled. The world's most famous museum was breached not by criminal masterminds, but by opportunists, men who saw a soft target and struck, whose DNA scattered sloppiness suggested they'd never expected to get this far. It fits a troubling pattern across French cultural institutions. The Natural History Museum robbed of gold weeks earlier. Other museums targeted throughout 2024, a wave suggesting systemic vulnerability rather than isolated incident. In 1911, an Italian handyman named Vincenzo Perugia walked out of the Louvre with the Mona Lisa under his coat, and the theft transformed an obscure Renaissance portrait into the most famous painting on Earth. Whether the crown jewels heist will similarly elevate its targets remains to be seen, but for now, Napoleon's emeralds exist somewhere in the shadows, their fate unknown, their story unfinished. 8 jewels missing, location unknown, suspects in custody, trial pending. Will the jewels resurface? Will they be dismantled? History waits. the Louvre has announced 100 new security cameras, a dedicated coordinator position, an accelerated implementation of a $93 million upgrade that was already years behind schedule when the thieves struck. Meanwhile, other precious jewels have been quietly transferred from the Louvre to the Bank of France, including the Regent diamond, the 140-carat stone the thieves ignored, now protected by vault walls rather than museum glass. They called it the most secure museum on Earth, but the password to watch over it all was the name everyone already knew. A detail so absurd it sounds invented, so negligent it borders on invitation. Somewhere tonight, 8 pieces of French history sit in darkness. Emeralds, Napoleon, placed around his empress's neck. Sapphires worn by the last queen before revolution. Pearls that adorned women whose names still echo through these halls. The Mona Lisa was missing for 2 years before Perugia tried to sell it in Florence and was caught. Proof that even the most famous stolen objects can return, that patience sometimes brings lost treasures home. And that's where we'll leave it. Thanks for listening and diving into this incredible story. If you enjoyed this story and want more documentaries like this, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And see you in the next one.